Still getting to these bands. It's a whole lot of them in my city. What about yours? Let's get to it, fam.
Let me demonstrate.
Grind Squad.
Gang, gang. Bandz in my city. Bandz in my city.
Everywhere.
Bandz in my city. Bandz in my city. Bandz in my city. Bandz in my city.
It's bands on the masonry and bands on the wood. It's bands on the west side. It's bands in the hood. It's bands on the south. It's bands in the park. It's bands in the daytime. It's bands in the dark. Bands on the brook. It's bands on the hill. It's bands down on Catherine. It's bands on the Ville. Bands in my city. Bands in my state. Bands down on Pine. Bands by the lake. Bands on Isabella. Bands for my team. It's bands on McLaughlin. It's bands down on Spring. Bands out on Hovey. That used to be the strip. Bands for my shows. Bands for my drip. Bands in the shores. Bands in the hall. Bands up on Getty. It's bands by the mall. It's bands in my city. Getting grands in my city. Yes, they hot in my city. Turned up in my city. Keep that stick in my city. In my city, getting grands in my city. Yes, they hot in my city. Turned up in my city. Keep that stick in my city. It's bands on the block, then it's bands to be made. It's bands for this kush, then it's time for us to get paid. It's bands from a lick, mean it's bands for a hit. It's bands for my trial, it's bands to a quit. It's bands for these broads, it's bands for my Jews. It's bands for my fit, it's bands for my shoes. It's bands for my foreign, it's bands that I stash. Bands in my tailpipe, bands in my dash, bands at my label, bands in my house, bands at my table, bands in my mouth, bands in my kitchen, bands in my dens, bands in my mattress, bands out these stems. It's bands in my city, getting grands in my city. Yes, they hot in my city, turned up in my city. Keep that stick in my city. In my city, getting grands in my city. Yes, they hot in my city, turned up in my city. Keep that stick in my city.
Bandz in my city. Bandz in my city. Bandz in my city.
They feel.
Bandz in my city. Bandz in my city.
Infinity.
Bandz in my city.
Band.